right, factoring. I can factor a quadratic expression. Factoring comes down to that whole idea or the strategy of using a generic box like this or generic rectangle and a diamond problem as we call it. And so it really comes down to, and you may want to put this down in the mistakes and notes box or whatever, but I go ahead and I put the first number in the first box. The first number goes here. The last number goes in the last box. Then I multiply those two together. So multiply those two together. And that number goes on the top of the box. And then the middle number from the original problem is the number that I haven't used yet. So that goes down here. And then the trick to solving the diamond problem is two numbers that multiply to make this one, but add to make this one down here. So remember, the top is multiply, the bottom is add to the middle number. Put the first number here, the last number here. This is the setup. Every time you should set it up like this. So if this is the first number, it goes in the first box. The last number goes in the last box. Then I multiply those two together. That's 16x squared. And I haven't used the negative 8x yet. So that goes down here, and that's my middle number. Then the key to unlocking this puzzle is what are two numbers that multiply to make this top number and two numbers that add to make the bottom number, and it's got to make it work. So multiplying to 16 is like 8 times 2, but that's not 8 apart. It's 4 times 4. I'm going to have some luck with 4 times 4 because 4 and 4 make 8. Therefore, the answers would be negative 4x and negative 4x, because a negative times a negative makes a positive, and a negative plus a negative makes more negatives. So then I put negative 4x in here, negative 4x over here, and then I go through and I try to figure out what would be on the outside to make this work. Well, there had to have been an x here and an x here, because x times x makes x squared. This would have to be minus 4, because minus 4 times x makes negative 4x. This would also had to have been minus 4, and then negative times a negative is a positive. So the two factors would be x minus 4 times x minus 4. Now that's a pretty reasonable answer, and that would be fine to put that. The only thing is that we in the math world know that if we repeat something through multiplication, we usually write that as an exponential. So we'd go x minus 4 squared like that would be the best final answer, but I tell you what, that shows the factors, so I'm okay with that as well. Most of your answers are going to look like this. Okay, this one down here is a special case. The special case is called difference of squares. Everything has to be square rootable, and it has to be separated by subtraction. If that's subtraction in there, and you know that you can do the square root of 9 and the square root of 4 and the square root of that, then you can actually just go to, well, it's the square root of all of the parts separated by adding and subtracting. The square root of 4 is 2, so they're both going to start with 2. The square root of x squared is x. They're both going to have an x in them. The square root of 9 is 3, so I put 3's on the end, and then I just separate it with a plus and a minus. So that technically is your answer, and you're done with that kind. It's using what's called the difference of squares shortcut. Difference, meaning subtraction, of squares, meaning they're all square rootable. So it's called the difference of squares shortcut. This is kind of a unique case. This one also is going to be a unique case like that, except it has an extra x to start with. So we're going to take the x out by factoring it out, and we'd have negative 6, or we'd have x squared minus 16, and then we can factor this because that's a subtraction and these are square rootable. So x and then x plus 4 and x minus 4. And all three of those parts would be the final answer to that question. The key to factoring is the setup. You have to set up the first number in the first box, the last number in the last box, multiply those together to the top, and figure out what adds to make the middle number in the bottom, just like this one up here. This is pretty common of what they mostly look like.